I had a teacher this year who just changed her completely, and it's just the most amazing lady. Teacher Vass, we call her, and she's just incredible and so kind and nurturing and loving. And I was sad for Rosie when she had to say goodbye at the end of the year. I think Rosie was even sadder. And yet the truth is that if I look at the value that Teacher Vass has on the world, in its totality on the world, it's more than most bankers as individuals, and yet the banker will earn 100 times what Teacher Vass does, and that doesn't make sense to me. What I like about the future is that the banker's job will get robotized so much quicker than Teacher Vass. It will be 50 years before you can even think of replacing that teacher of a 4-year-old with a robot. But replacing, Robo wealth advisors are coming fast and here to stay. So I do think that we'll start to place a premium on that as we see the value of it in our children's lives. As parents, it's the one thing we spend a lot on is our kids. And so I really hope that changes. I also think the same about policemen, actually. If I see a policeman, for the most part, I really try and take the time to thank them. Because, particularly in South Africa, I don't think they get enough respect. If I'm honest, sometimes they've done that disservice to themselves. If you go to London, when you're near a policeman, you feel quite comforted, and you're not afraid to go and ask them for help. And I have done a number of times, because I'm terrible with directions, and they always will take the time and be patient. So I think policemen can be quite scary, but it's become often a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's so amazing to choose to be a policeman. You're putting your life on the line for your fellow man, and yet we don't give them good salaries and enough respect, and that makes me sad. And bizarrely, I was at a MacDonalds in Sea Point, and it was a long queue, and I needed a milkshake. Sometimes you want a milkshake. And so I went in, and I ended up sitting next to a traffic cop, and I chatted to this guy for 45 minutes. I even sent him a Christmas present last year because he was such an amazing guy. And the way he opened up to me was like no one had ever asked him about his job. And it was just amazing for me to hear, and I just felt, I left that McDonald's, what a strange place to have, deep, meaningful conversation, but I left that McDonald's feeling really good about the world, just because this guy, and he'd been a traffic cop for like 30 years, but it's terrible. So I actually ended up asking him, do you mind telling me what you earn? And it was terrible. And yet without people like that, what would we have in society? So I really hope that as the world evolves and we become, in theory, a bit more enlightened, that will change. But my biggest fear, however, is that evil politicians need uneducated people to survive. And I actually do believe that it may not be a day-to-day intent, but I think there is a broader acknowledgement amongst corrupt politicians that we did not let people get too clever. Because clever people are questioning and think critically, and clever people don't vote for bad politicians in the majority, and so you end up with a majority who's uneducated, therefore buy into populist rhetoric by a corrupt politician and keep a system going, and that's been true for hundreds of years. America currently is proof of it. It's easy to point at South Africa, but the people who voted Trump in are uneducated for the most part. There are some people who are really educated who voted him in for actually very clever reasons, because you have to hit the bottom before you can go up, and they saw that. But I worry, that is a huge concern of mine, is that I do believe in majority rule, in democracy as a principle, but if the majority is uneducated, it can spiral out of control pretty quickly. And there are a lot of unintended consequences to that. And so I guess your last question, I think, was, something like how would you change the world, or what's your point of view on education? That is the thing. For me, I feel like I've made enough money to be happy. I don't need any more money. I have to change the world for the sake of my children and my grandchildren. And I believe fundamentally that the only way I can do that myself is through education, because I think that is the thing that can make the difference. I think Mandela said it's the one thing that can change the world, and it's true. And so I have this responsibility on my shoulders to make a dent on that. And my dent will be small, sadly. I'd like it to be huge, and maybe it will be if I can find a way. But even if it is tiny, if everyone tried to make a tiny dent through education, we'd have a better planet.